Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com. I got a little distracted in my last video by the latest Bruckner insanity, but now we're back on track. I wanted to do a little chat about the future of classical music because it's been on my mind lately since turning 60 recently. And, I have to say, it makes a difference. I know a lot of you out there, since so many of you chimed in on my 60th birthday, and I realized that we're all the same age or maybe a little older, and there are some younger people there. Take heart, you're soon going to be in our position. But the point is that I wanted to make is I was going to the doctor, okay? And I always thought of, you don't think of yourself as 60, do you? You think of yourself as you. I always thought of myself as a kid. I don't know if we get older, if we think older. I don't anyway. And I always looked up to doctors. They were always sort of these venerable old people taking care of me, the kid, right? So I'm going to the doctors, and all of a sudden it just hit me. I'm older than they are. What are these children doing? Injecting me with stuff and telling me what to do. I mean, what business have they to tell me that? What experience of life do they have? I mean, it really was kind of a shock to actually realize that I'm at that point, where I'm older than they are. And that raised a whole musical, because everything relates to music in my life, a whole issue that I wanted to talk to you about. And it reminded me of a wonderful, wonderful little episode that happened to me when I was working in a record store when I was in college. And, this young guy, he was like my age at the time, in his early 20s, came in and he said he was looking for the complete Hugo Wolf Society recordings that were on EMI, remastered from 78 and all that stuff. And I just looked at him and I said, no. And he said, well, you mean you don't have them? And I said, yeah, we have them. You can't have them. And he said, well, why can't I have them? And I said, well, how old are you? And he said, well, I'm 21. I said, no, you're not old enough. You can't have them. I said, first of all, you can't have historical recordings until you're over 50. And because you want Hugo Wolf, you get the geriatric penalty. You can't listen to Hugo Wolf, leader, until you're at least 80. And of course, I said it in my usual deadpan manner, and he looks at me with total horror. And he said, but I want it. I want it. I said, no, you can't have it. I'm sorry. Come back in 58 years or 59 years, and then we can discuss it. And, I was a bad salesperson, I suppose. Sometimes I could have been. And he wound up getting them. I mean, we found them eventually, but he didn't get the joke. Maybe it wasn't a joke. And I remembered as I was dreaming about all of this stuff, sitting in the doctor's office, that I had written an editorial. And it was a while ago. I don't remember exactly when, but I had posted it eventually. I'd used it a couple of times. And I went back and I found it. And I want to share it with you now because I really think it says something significant about the future of classical music. So here it is. The editorial is called To Hell with Young People and subtitled Reality Check. The future of classical music lies with seniors. Yes, it does. So I wrote it, by the way, 20 years ago. So keep that in mind. It begins, maybe it's because I've just turned 40. Oh my God. I mean, just looking at this and realizing I wrote this 20 years ago was like a shock. But it seems that everywhere I turn, I'm confronted with the crisis of classical music and today's youth. Gramophone magazine is retooling itself to reach a younger audience. Remember that? Now that's ancient history. Policymakers and supporters of the arts attend lectures on the theoretically devastating effect of the lack of music education is having on America's young people. Record company executives fret that tomorrow's consumers aren't being properly trained to consume. The supposed health benefits of exposing young children to classical music have become the patent medicine of the new millennium. I'm sick of it. And if I was sick of it 20 years ago, you can only imagine how I feel now. It's killing me. The audience for classical music consists of A, those rare, exceptionally musical people of all ages who just naturally like it best. And to those of you, I say, I love you. Welcome. The door is open. Come in. B, students studying musical instruments at various levels. I mean, they like their instruments. I don't know if they like the music that they play. And C, older people like us. Of these three categories, older people make up the largest group. Is this really so surprising? Our population in general is aging. The enjoyment of classical music requires a taste for the finer things in life, loads of patience, a good bit of listening experience, and ample free time. It can't be hurried. And who are the members of our society most likely to have these qualities? Older people, obviously. The idea that children have to be systematically exposed to classical music to create future aficionados won't wash. In the first place, concert venues routinely sell out all over the country. The American Symphony Orchestra League reports that, despite a few well-publicized cases here and there, their numbers in aggregate are running in the black, with the highest percentage ever of revenue coming from ticket sales. Opera is the fastest growing performing arts medium in the country. Are the audiences for these events children? Of course not. Concert attendees are overwhelmingly adults, and mature adults at that, few of whom had any in-depth formal exposure or training in their childhoods. I mean, if you did, great, you're lucky. It doesn't mean we shouldn't do it. I think we should, because it's part of a well-rounded education, but not so as to create cultural consumers. That's a different question. So even so-called children's concerts appeal more to parents than to kids. I know. For over a decade, I played an annual holiday program of Peter and the Wolf at the 92nd Street Y to rapturous audiences of enchanted parents. The children enjoyed it too, but not nearly as much. You see, children have no attitude about whether something is classical or not. They like what they like and want only to be entertained rather than bored. It's the parents who derive pleasure from the cultural afflatus that surrounds such events. Or look at it this way. Dog food has to be made to look appetizing to pet owners because they're buying the stuff, not their pets. If they want to feed little Snoopy, they want to feed little Snoopy what looks best to Mama and Papa. So it is with classical music. Children's concerts are really music appreciation sessions for adults. As often as not, the kids couldn't care less. Classical music, in fact, pervades society. In films, television shows, commercials, Olympic ice skating events, restaurants, department stores, you name it. Systematic or not, everyone gets exposed to it at one point or another sufficiently, in sufficient quantity to determine whether or not they'd like to hear more. Take my brother, for example. He's a very successful real estate executive in the Cleveland area. He was then, with a lovely wife and two adorable kids, young adults. Oh, God, the time flies. When we were growing up, I was playing symphonies and he was playing football. He hated symphonies, I hated football. Now he attends Cleveland Orchestra concerts regularly, and I never miss a Giants game. What happened? We both grew up. That's all. It's inevitable. The crux of the matter can be summed up in two words: free time. Children in school have very little of it, and unless they decide to study an instrument or take a course, most of their exposure to music of any kind will remain purely superficial. Young adults starting careers and families also aren't likely to have a great deal of time on their hands, and who can blame them for having priorities other than the experience of classical music? And so we come back to old people, the folks with the desire, time, and wherewithal to put classical music higher on their list of priorities. Why are we so afraid of the fact that they comprise the majority of classical music listeners? It's not as if senior citizens are an irreplaceable resource. All of us someday will join their ranks, given reasonably good health and a little sensible financial planning. If the record companies really want to sell the product and concert promoters dispense still more tickets, they should stop fretting about the youth issue. Instead, why not toss some CDs into a van, for example, and start selling them door to door in retirement communities in Florida and Arizona? That's where the new audience is, even if it happens to be an old one. Wake up, you foolish label executives, blinded by your youth-obsessed colleagues in the popular music division down the hall. Wake up, you concert promoters, counting with mounting trepidation the number of gray-haired ladies at each event. This is your audience. Accept it, love it, cater to it. There's a lot more where they come from. Leave the kiddies to play out in the yard. Their time will come too. I guarantee it. Of course, I should change that last line. This is your audience. Accept us. Love us. Cater to us. There's a lot more where we come from. Right? I think that's, it seems to me this is common sense. It was obvious to me 20 years ago and before when I wrote this. But even more than that, if we look at the classical music world today, we see it filled with budding young executives, fresh with their statistics and their marketing surveys of young people. And look at what's happening. Look at what's happening at the record labels. Look at the shit that they're putting out. I mean, it's nothing but recital albums by sexy classical kittens in low-cut dresses, or aria recitals by strange-sounding countertenors, or stuff. Remember when I did a video on Universal's latest classical releases? Stuff we've never heard of, stuff in no possible genre, stuff that they're instead of trying to sell classical music, they're trying to redefine what the genre of classical music is to create pop stars who do whatever they do. They may call it classical, but it's whatever they do. And so I think that we may be screaming in vain. We older stirs, we altacockers, as I like to call me and my friends, that may be what we are, and maybe we're just grumpy. But it could also be that we are experienced and knowledgeable, and we have taste, and we have strong preferences, and more to the point, Mr. Label Executive and concert promoter, we have money. We have money that we're willing to spend on this stuff. So rather than trying to get it from the kids, how about going to the people who want it and selling it to them in a way that rewards them for their expenditure? Isn't that a novel concept? Wouldn't that be fascinating? Think it's ever going to happen? Nah, never. Never in a billion years. Because by the time the label executives figure that out, they've retired. And the younger crew is there to mess things up all over again. In the meantime, keep on listening, folks. We're going to do it. We're going to keep on listening, and in our own, perhaps quiet, unassuming way, we will make America classical again. Damn it. Thanks for joining me. Take care.